Rodzina by Karen Cushman, Chapter 4, Grand Island. The morning has gold in its mouth, Papa used to say. I understood as I woke to a flash of new-risen sun across the plains. All that day the country flew by in a blur of yellows and browns. I had not known the United States was so big, and the West so far away. Never had I been so far from home. Well, Poland was farther, I knew, but it was not my home really, in that we left when I was too young to remember. Home was that room on the third floor on Honore Street, and it was miles and miles and miles behind me as we traveled into the unknown. That evening, as we sped toward Grand Island farther into the great state of Nebraska, Mr. Sprott called us all together. "You ragamuffins, sit and be quiet." He waited, cigar wobbling up and down, 4-inch piece of ash dangling off the end, until all 20 of us, well, 21 with all of us, were in our seats with our mouths closed before he went on. Grand Island, as you know, will be our first opportunity to meet the ladies and gentlemen of the West who will be your new families. More accurately, the first time we would be paraded like cattle, sold as slaves, and disposed of like old meat, I thought. "I want to assist you all in landing good homes, you big boys," he said to Henry the Knife, "and some others will be much in demand to help with farm work." Slaves, I knew it. "The rest of you must be at your most appealing," he grinned, cigar stuck between his yellow teeth, "leastwise those of you who can be appealing. Now watch me." He got down on his knees and crawled over to Sammy. "Please, sir, I want to go home with you," he said, a high babyish voice coming from behind the cigar. "Please, could I go with you? I'm a good little boy." How could even folks as unfeeling as Sprott and the lady doctor send these little kids to be slaves to strangers? I turned away disgusted. While Mr. Sprott and the younger orphans practiced, Hermie the Knife flopped himself onto the seat next to me. "First stop, I'm cutting out of here, back home to Slab Town," he muttered. "I ain't going to work on no farm with no yellow-haired hayseed from nowhere town. No, sir, not me." He turned and saw me next him. "What you looking at, clumsy Polish girl? Immigrant? Greenhorn? Why don't you go back to wherever it was you came from?" "I come from Chicago just like you, lunkhead," I said. He stood up, fire in his eyes, and I guessed in his fists. He was awful big, but stupid, whereas I was big, strong as an ox, and smart. I was not afraid of him. I stood up, too. There we were, near eye to eye, rocking and bouncing in that train, getting closer and closer to Grand Island. Finally Hermie said, "Greenhorn," spat on the floor and shoved his way to the back of the car, through the crowd of orphans pulling on each other and saying, "Please, could I go home with you and be your little boy?" I sat down again. I would not practice. I would not beg to be taken by strangers and mistreated. I wanted to be left alone. After more rocking and swaying and pleading, the rehearsal ended, and those few orphans who had a change of clothes to put on their best duds. Most were like me. Our old clothes had been discarded as worthless at the orphan home, and we stood, sat, and slept in what we had been given. Plaid dresses and pinafores for the girls, knickers and jackets and ties for the boys, except for Sammy and Joe, who had come straight from the street in their dirty knickers and ragged short shirts. After our days and nights on the train, the rest of us didn't look much better than they did. I took off my pinafore, which appeared to have been the battlefield for a fight between a jelly sandwich and an ash can. The dress beneath was wrinkled and travel-stained, but would have to do. Miss Doctor and I helped the little ones straighten their clothes. "Come here, Joe," I said. "Let me neaten you up a bit." As I reached to tuck in his shirt, he pulled roughly away. "Keep your mitts off me." "Sammy, tell your brother." "Joe ain't my brother," Sammy said, but he moved in to fix Joe's shirt and slick down his hair. "Now me, Ro," said Lacey. "Rodzina," I murmured as I unbraided her hair. Now my hair was all right, yellowish and a little wavy, but ordinary. But Lacey's hair was gorgeous, almost alive, snapping and sparkling, standing out about her head like the halo around a street lamp on a foggy night. I could have hated her for her hair alone. I may have pulled a little harder than necessary as I brushed and rebraided it. We rounded a sharp bend, and the train leaned way over. I saw Nellie grab Miss Doctor's skirt in her sticky hand and hold on tight. Frowning, Miss Doctor yanked her skirt away so hard Nellie almost fell down. Why is that lady doctor so frosty and unfriendly, I wondered. Would it have killed her to be nice to us orphans that we were? Why, doctors were as rich as cream. She was bound to have hundreds of skirts. So what if a little jelly got on this one? I feared Nellie would disappear like poor Gertie for the crime of touching Miss Doctor. I waved Nellie over to me, dusted her off, and smoothed her hair. Here, I said to her, hang on to my skirt. She did. Mr. Sprott got us all orphans together to practice our singing for tonight. Why folks would be so blamed eager to hear orphans sing, I don't know, but it seemed to be so. Mr. Sprott stood in front of the car, his cigar waggling and his hands waving around like he was drawing pictures in the air, while we sang loud and lively and out of tune. Yankee Doodle was my favorite, for Chester's voice broke each time on the last word, handy, and it was better than the whole rest of the song. Singing made me warm, so I got myself a dipper full of water to wash my face and cool off. Mickey Dooley came over and asked, "What are you going to do with that?" But I ignored him. Did you ever notice how folks with the least to say talk the most? Take Mickey Dooley. We passed more farms and less prairie, and then a clump of small wooden houses, shops, and even a church. And there we were in Grand Island, which was neither grand nor an island as far as I could see. The sun was setting as we stepped out of the train onto a tiny platform, and the sky was lit up like the 4th of July, fluffy white clouds, bursts of gold and flames of orange, and then darkness fell like a velvet cloak. Never had I seen such a sunset, and it clean broke my heart. I took a deep breath and then another and another. The air smelled so good, pure and clean like nothing bad ever happened here. Not like the Honore Street in Chicago with its slaughterhouses, garbage dumps, and creeks bubbling with sewage. We lined up on the platform and Miss Doctor had two of the littlest girls by the hand. Rose and Pearl Lovenitz are going back home, Mr. Sprott told us. Their mother changed her mind about giving them up and wants them back. He chewed his cigar a bit. Better for them, I suppose. I find in general orphans come to no good end. Miss Doctor frowned and nudged him. While we go to engage someone to take them back to Chicago, he went on. You alley rats stay right here. We all watched them walk into the station. Lucky Rose and Pearl Lovenitz. You could hear sighs and whimpers and out and out crying from those left behind. I'd wager every one of us wanted a mama to go back to, someone who'd take us from this train and back to Chicago, where she'd say, it was all a misunderstanding. I am not dead, and you have not been sent away, and would make us pound cake and lemonade and tuck us into bed.